I was always on edge. And even during the days where we're closed, I had calls forwarded to my cell phone. As a restaurant operator, people always say you're always on, right? There's no day off, right? As you alluded to Sebastian earlier in the call. Well, it's a grind, right? I was looking at all these little ways where I can automate and make my life a little easier. So with the advancements in generative AI, I looked at the phone answering and I thought, hey, why wouldn't generative AI be able to have an impact in the customer experience at restaurants?
Welcome to the Restaurant Leaders Unplugged podcast, where real talks with restaurant leaders take center stage. Discover the challenges and victories that define success in the culinary world. Dive into essential strategies from marketing to operations and gain insights that will transform your approach to your restaurant business. Don't just keep up, lead the way. Join me, your host, Sebastian, on this journey to excellence. Randall, welcome to the Restaurant Leaders Unplugged podcast. It's really a pleasure to have you here. I think it's going to be a really interesting conversations here that we're going to have. I'm very interested to learn more about what you're doing. So anyways, let's get into it and welcome.
Thanks for having me and super excited.
All right, Randall. So let's start at the beginning, man. This is how we start the shows. Learning a little bit about your background, what got you into the crazy world of restaurants that we all love and hate at the same time. And now you've kind of dived into a whole different realm, which is technology and especially AI. And of course, but always working with restaurants. Yeah, take us back.
Totally, for sure. So yeah, where it started for restaurants for me is my parents actually started a restaurant in San Francisco and they called it Gaetanos. And it was in this building in Nob Hill, really old building. And my grandma, she actually owned the building and she used to have her laundry. And she basically sold the laundromat and got into real estate. So she built her real estate empire from the ground up. And then my parents, they decided to start a restaurant in one of her buildings. And what they realized is running restaurants is really tough. My dad was a dentist and then my mom, she was in finance, but they tried to do it on the side. And then fast forward, I would say probably 40 years later, my sister and I, we got this urge to start a restaurant actually in the same space. There was an old traditional Italian restaurant that bought the space from my parents and they ran it for 30 years or over 30 years. And in that restaurant, they installed this wood-fired pizza oven. And they unfortunately shut down during the pandemic, but actually it's pretty fortunate from our ends, right? So my sister and I, we decided to take a pause from our tech and she was in art. So both of those careers, and we decided to start a restaurant in that same space. And the goal there was to bring a lot of our interests together. We have a huge interest in food, a huge interest in winemaking, as my parents were winemakers actually. And then the third thing is actually music, a restaurant called Back. And it incorporates, so it's wood-fired pizzas, natural wine, and then we do all of our music on vinyl.
That's very cool, man. You don't see that much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Not at all, especially in San Francisco.
Yeah. So what was the moment, Dan? Because listen, running a restaurant, like you just said, it's very complex. It seems like a good idea for most people that get into it. Happened to me, right? I was like, hey, I'm going to get into restaurant business. And I truly didn't know what I was getting myself into, even if I would say people would try to talk me out of it. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's going to be different, whatever it is. And it wasn't. It's the same story over and over again. So how did you go from the idea of, okay, we're running a restaurant, now we're doing this deal and it requires full attention, by the way, to, hey, there's some opportunities here with tech and how can we tie in these two? What were the things that you were seeing in your experience in the restaurant business that led you to explore the tech side of things and how to make things better in the industry? Because of course, I know we've come a long way, but this industry in particular, we're still quite behind.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's definitely pretty interesting how, that sort of idea came about. I think overall, I look at workflows and I think a lot of efficiency mechanisms, right? And think through like, how can things be done more efficiently, right? And that's like the way that I approach a lot of problems. I think a lot of this comes from my previous like education and prior career in tech too. Prior to starting a restaurant, I was a product designer at Instacart and
Mm.
Flexport. This idea of like design thinking, where looking at problems, how can they be solved using different sort of methodologies
Mhm.
and applying them to a business. There are many different scenarios that I was, or like problems I was looking at in the restaurant industry. It just so happened
Mm.
that phone answering was the one that stood out to me
Mm.
as one that I was very passionate about. Was whenever someone was calling out sick in the kitchen, I would actually have the phone in the back pocket, in my back pocket. I would be so afraid to miss out on a business opportunity, whether it's a missed reservation, a takeout order, or private event.
Mhm.
So I was always on edge. And even during the days where we're closed, I had calls forwarded to my cell phone. As a restaurant operator, people always say you're always on, right? There's no day off, right? As you
Mhm.
alluded to Sebastian earlier in the call.
Mhm.
Well, it's a grind, right? I was looking at all these little ways where I can automate and make my life a little easier. So with the advancements in generative I looked at the phone answering and I thought, hey, why wouldn't generative AI be able to have an impact in the customer experience at restaurants?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's how Hosty. Now it was former Make for D. You guys went in to change name, but so that's how Hosty was born, basically. From
that is how
yeah.
Hosty was born. Yeah. And
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. It's fascinating. Randall, walk us through a little bit of how the system works and what it solves for restaurants. Because we're talking about here that, of course, answering calls, that is a big issue. I also remember doing the same thing, like getting at that time, having the phone in my pocket because I could answer the phone calls. Or you would have somebody basically taking the calls, but he was actually taking an online order. And that guy was like running around the restaurant, like to get the phone. And it's like, "Hey, I got the phone." And then it would just ring or somebody that didn't even care because whatever, let it ring because we were busy and didn't have a designated person. You can't afford to have somebody sitting there just answering the phone. Yes, some restaurants do. They can have a hostess or whatever it is, but many don't.
right.
Mm.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think what you mentioned is really interesting, right? Because this problem, it has a direct correlation in the way that we think about labor, right? And the idea behind Hosty is we don't want to take anyone's job at all.
Mm.
And I think that's what the way that we look at AI as a whole, right? I don't think, yeah, maybe call centers are the area where AI is like gunning after the most, right? But I think AI is more seen as an assistance to
Mhm.
humans, right? So that's
Yeah.
where what we look at Hosty as being, right? A sort of assistant to your restaurant. And yeah, I think an interesting case study that we have is Flour and Water. They're one of our early design partners in San
Mhm.
Francisco, and it was like a really upscale, but not like fine dining restaurant, right? And what's really interesting about them is they actually had this team of admins and reservationists that sat above the restaurant, and they would answer the phones all the time, right? COVID had a huge impact on the way that they thought about labor and whatnot, right? They shifted roles around, tried to push all communication down to email, right? Which kind of works, but it also doesn't because your customer who needs immediate assistance, right? Hey, I'm running
Mhm.
late for my 8 p.m. reservation, or hey, I need to add one more person, right? A lot of those requests drop off via email, right? And they had this call recording that walked through the hours of operation, the location, suggested guests to send an email. But what you would end up getting is a lot of pissed off customers.
Yep.
So they looked at us as this interesting solution that could assist their team, right? A
Mhm.
lot of these requests, right? Now, in place of the recording that they have is Hosty, they actually call their voice assistant Arena. So that's flower in Spanish. And so it's Arena that picks up and it can answer any basic question. We can even adjust the reservation for
Yeah.
people. So it is like an assistant to their team.
That's very cool. That's very cool. And so Tell me about, so you guys have full integrations with certain systems in industry, I'm assuming, because to be able to do those type of things, how does that work?
Yeah, with the big players in the
Mhm.
restaurant world, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a lot tougher than it actually is on as it actually seems on paper, right? Like when we started this company, we thought we could just knock on Resi's door or Open Table's door and say, "Hey, you guys want a partner? I'm a restaurateur." But it's not that easy. What we've had to do is build up enough traction, right? Of sign on enough strategic accounts, right? Like a Flour and Water to gain
Mm,
the attention of a Resi or Open Table and
yeah.
slowly build up these partnerships.
Yeah.
I think one guest that you actually brought on that we've recently announced a partnership with is Luke from Perfect Venue.
Mm,
So yeah, that's one that has been top of mind for us. And what we do there is whenever a customer calls in about a private event or a large party booking, depending on how the restaurant has set up their large party rules, right? Some require 13 people, 16 people,
mm,
right? All that stuff is really configurable. But our Hosty attendant or Hosty assistant will actually collect the necessary information over the phone or over a text
mm,
message and then link with the Perfect Venue system. And then
mm,
the lead will just appear in Perfect Venue. So
mm,
we do
mm.
the same thing with reservation systems and POS systems as well.
Yeah, that's very cool, Randall. So, what do you find that, because listen, many restaurateurs, as you may have experienced, are hesitant sometimes to adopt these new technologies because they think, oh, this is too complex. How am I going to do this? And onboarding, they're always thinking, oh, it's going to take too much of my time. And it's like Toast was like the first one that came with this stuff for restaurant owners, because we were one of the first adopters. I remember in Miami when they came out. And like the whole support was like, here are your videos, here are your stuff to figure out, like a tech company. And it's like restaurateurs are not used to that. I think they're better now. So what have you found? Been your experience when presenting this new technology to restaurateurs? And of course, I see the tremendous value in this, but sometimes it might be a little hard. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, that's a huge challenge that we address every single day. And we like to pride ourselves on being really quick setup wise. It's almost like
Mm,
training an employee, right? So the
mm,
first step is actually generating this playbook. So our team does this for restaurants. We generate this playbook of responses. So if someone asks about hours of operation or if someone asks for large party booking, right, we'll actually build up these pre-built responses based on what the restaurant has published on their website, right,
mm,
anywhere online. And then we'll use that as like a baseline response for the AI. We'll toss that playbook over to the restaurant and ask them to just tweak it, every response into their own voice and tone. And then they'll give it back to us. We'll use that to train the AI. And then we'll connect the necessary systems on our end. All in all, it takes 40 minutes to an hour. But
pretty
man,
quick.
yeah, I can't imagine being like an open table like back in the early 2000s, right? And they're trying to get reservationists and maitre d's to move off of the reservation books, right? And I heard stories of Open Table doing really interesting things of buying internet for restaurants, right? 'Cause no one had the internet back then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine being them and like changing the behavior. I think we're in a similar space, right? Where it's
Mm,
trying to change the behavior of how restaurants answer their phones and
mhm.
respond to customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Randa, you were just talking about a case study of this high-end restaurant. So do you have anything in particular that you can share with your audience, like of how, of course, Hosties not only just solving these problems, but in terms of stats or KPIs, anything that you can share, just to give us a better understanding and idea of what's possible?
Yeah, definitely. I think Flour and Water, again, is a really interesting case study for us. They're a fairly small restaurant, but widely popular.
Mhm,
It's actually really hard to get a reservation there. They only have 13 seats that they open up on Resi, right? What people don't know is they save half of their restaurant available for walk-ins, right? So
mm,
we decided to tell people that when they were calling about a reservation, right? Because it was almost for sure certain to no, right?
mm,
No reservations available. Instead of saying no, we actually say, hey, we save half of your restaurants available for walk-in. We recommend coming in. And we saw their walk-ins skyrocket to 13% within the first
Mhm.
month of these. So this is a huge anomaly compared to other months. But yeah, I would say other KPIs. So for certain restaurant groups, we've been answering over 1,000 calls per month. And the average call duration is around 1 minute. So
Yeah.
60 seconds to 70 seconds. I would say that 80% of these are reservations. And then, yeah, I think that's a high level.
Those are incredible numbers. When you look at it, it's so many missed opportunities from very simple steps that it won't be taken because there's not a system or people in place. And especially now with labor costs being so high, everybody's looking at how to be more efficient with everything that they're doing. So I think definitely this solves a big problem. Randall, when when you go and talk to a restaurant about AI, what do you think are the most common misconceptions about it, especially in restaurants, and how do you guys address them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say the first one is, hey, is this going to take someone's job? Going back to the earlier point, right? We actually want to be an assistant for the restaurant. There is still component of our software where there is some handholding, right? We actually notify the restaurant of any important conversation that's coming their way. So if it's
Mhm.
a reservation that's over 6, 7 people, depends on what the restaurant deems
Right.
as most important, right? So we'll actually notify them. So there is some manual effort that needs to happen, right? Or maybe it's an important takeout order, right? I would say we're not taking over anyone's job. So it
Mhm.
needs to be someone greeting the guests. Let's see. I think another one is, yeah, I think that's probably the main one, actually.
They don't because what I found is now, of course, people are way more bought into the AI technology because they see how it works and it sees okay. Well, some resistance that we see is it's still it's like it's still not there, or they're just gonna give out the wrong information or whatever it is because they still think it's gonna be robotic. And I don't want to talk to a bot because this is hospitality. How the hell are
Right.
you gonna tell me that you're gonna replace a human being with a bot?
Yeah, that's totally right, Sebastian. And I was going to ask you what you've been saying,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would say, yeah. Are we going to lose out on the delivering excellent hospitality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say like we've fine tuned. This is like what we're prioritizing first and
Hmm.
foremost, right? Just
Hmm.
like conversation quality and having that human element to the conversation, right? So yeah, we've done really interesting things like with certain responses, there needs to be a certain processing that the AI goes through, right? So we do have these thinking phrases that we fill in, like
Yeah.
got it, right? Or one moment while I think about that. We try to make it as human as possible.
Yeah. Listen, I am just blown away and I'm a huge proponent of this. And we actually employ it as well in different things, but especially the voice AI, it's incredible how far it's come. It sounds like it's like a like a human's talking to you almost. You know what I mean? It's like even the pauses, the tone, like
Right.
the language, like everything.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so important as a restaurant operator to almost like train on that too, right? Where it's, hey, like you really want to be extremely hospitable over the phone because you can't really see the person. Voice and tone really matters.
Yeah, 100%. Randall, in terms of customer data, because that's another thing that it's like I don't know if it's a buzzword, but it's been going around a lot, of course, in the restaurant is all customer data. It's got to be personal experience, all these things, and analyzing, having access to your data and doing things with the data. And I think just unless there are larger groups, which they do leverage the data. Many of the smaller operators, they just don't have the time or the knowledge to actually leverage that. Do you guys in some way leverage customer data for hosting in some way?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point, Sebastian. Data is so important, especially in our industry, right? Understanding who your regulars are. I think what makes a really great HRD is actually goes back to Danny Meyer setting the
Mhm.
table, right? It's a really good maitre d' will actually record information about a customer and log it into our system of record. And they'll maintain the relationship, but which actually like very unfortunate about our industry is there's a ton of turnover, right? And you
Mhm.
lose that maitre d, lose the relationship. So we always look at the intricacies of really good maitre d. What are the things that they're doing that can be replicated or
Mm.
automated technology, right? So the way that we see ourselves is, hey, can we actually be the lifelong maitre d for a restaurant, right? The things that we like to do is surface how many times like a large party reservation or reservation has been mentioned. So we surface that in a dashboard, right? You can drill into those things. And we're starting to collect customer profiles, right? We're starting to form customer profiles. And we have a very unique set of data, right? Because we know, how often your customers are calling, what time of
Mhm.
day, what they're calling
Mhm.
about, and what their first names are, right? I think eventually we'll be addressing people by their first names, recognizing if they're regulars in our
Mhm.
system, and so on and so forth.
Because you guys are integrating fully with open systems like Open Table, so you have access to all that data. If the host is actually entering all that information into the system, then the
Yeah, yeah,
system
yeah.
can pull that info, and then when the customer comes, then it can refer back to any of that data that it has.
And what's also unique about our system is whenever someone calls, right, we're automatically collecting that information about what they're calling about and who the names are. So,
Very cool. Fun question. Can you choose the voice that you want for the voice agent?
oh yeah, oh yes. So, yeah, I don't know if you've heard of yeah, and we've had some really interesting requests too. So I don't know if you've heard of the Stinking Rose in San Francisco, but they're an older group and they had this request to they actually have this auto attendant, right? It's this recording, right? And it's interactive. So press
Mhm.
one, speak to the host. And it's a vampire that picks up. So they wanted to maintain that, right? So we actually generated a vampire voice for them.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
out in New York, there's this restaurant. It's a wine bar called Sauced. We provided them with this New York accent. We call it New York Nick. It's a street sort of
Yep.
like,
Yep.
hey, it's Nick. What's going
Yeah.
on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we have that for them. So
That's very cool, man. That's very cool. Yeah. And so what's in two things, Randall? There's so many things going on in the industry right now. What are the trends that you're seeing in restaurant tech and AI evolving? What are you guys looking at that's coming and where are you guys heading?
yeah, Sebastian, you're probably more of an expert here than I am
Mm.
because you're chatting with so many of these professionals. But basically, what I'm saying is there's a lot invested into loyalty, right? I think restaurants are
Mm.
realizing that, hey, like the most important customers are the customers that come twice, three times, four times. So it's, how can I actually understand who those customers are and what their habits are as well? And then it's like the sort of efficiency piece that we spoke about as well, right? How can I maintain or lower my labor costs, right? And drive efficiency, but also maintain a high bar of delivering excellent hospitality. So yeah, I think AI has this really interesting, yeah, opportunity, right?
Mm.
Attacking both of those areas. So yeah, I think it's
Mm.
those two pieces.
Yeah, no, definitely. Listen, I think that right now there's just a boom of people exploring like what to do with it because there's just so much, right? And all the possibilities, which is really cool. And I think many are doing it right. Many are just dressing up the system and okay, I'll make it too interesting or whatever it is. But I think it's just gonna become mainstream. I think it 100% with everywhere because it's just making our lives easier in many ways. I was listening to this other podcast. I think it was Diary of a CEO, something like that. This guy talking about how it's just gonna be becoming smarter and smarter, like AI will. Like right now, it's a 120 IQ. It'll go to 400, like a million, basically, or something like that. So it'll become like it was the Industrial Revolution at some point, and this time it'll be like the tech AI revolution, and it will change the complete landscape of how we work and how we do things.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think it's going to be very interesting for our industry and how we can leverage technology while still maintaining hospitality, which is the personal touch. Because I don't think we want to stray away from that because that's
Right.
what makes people also want to go out, because connecting with other people. It's just seeing how we can leverage this into making a better experience, providing a better experience for our guests, but again, without losing that personal touch that we all crave for as human beings, I think.
Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. And yeah, I think it is like for those smaller restaurants who are being stretched really thin. I think for them especially, it's how can we up level our hospitality, right? And meet the standards that are set by the larger restaurant groups. And I think AI has really interesting opportunity in doing that.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, Randall, what's next for Hosty? What are you guys working on? What's coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, I don't want to
If you don't mind
reveal.
sharing. Yeah.
I don't want to reveal all of our secrets here.
Yeah, just to get people excited about it. What you can.
Yeah, no, I think what's awesome is we actually just raised a seed round. The So it's led by Google's AI fund, which is really awesome. And then
It's incredible.
also we're backed by Burst. So that's, former founders of Yelp essentially. And then Thomas Layton, who's the former CEO of OpenTable, is on there as well. So we're going to have some more capital to do some really interesting things like grow the team and
Wow.
yeah, all that neat stuff. I think what you'll see from us is like more partnerships, right? I think that's like first and foremost what we're investing a lot into.
Yeah.
But then more of the personalization stuff as well. Like
Yeah.
Sebastian, you mentioned critical part is maintaining that high bar of hospitality, right? So I think a lot of that is going to be in the way that we can personalize AI and open the doors to restaurants to actually configure that. Yeah.
Oh man, that's exciting, Randall. That's so awesome, man. I'm actually excited for you because with those resources and everything that's going on, like, it's everything that you can do with this, it's incredible. So it's-
It's scary also. We have to
yeah.
work
All right.
out.
I hear you, man. When you're getting with those guys, if you're rounding up money, yes, it gets pretty stressful because you got to keep them happy. So, Randall, last question. So if you could fast forward 10 years, what is the impact that you hope that Hosty will have on the hospitality industry?
Yeah, I think it is. My heart is definitely in the independent operators and the smaller groups, right? I like to think about back to back and the amount of effort that is required to on every single day and night to deliver excellent hospitality using our very small and nimble team. I think up-leveling those types of restaurants and enabling them to actually understand who their customers are better. And there's no reason why a small little restaurant can't compete with a really great restaurant and deliver on the same level of hospitality that a really great restaurant can't. I think it is the 10-year vision is like giving the tools that the smaller restaurants need to up-level their businesses.
That's fantastic, Randall. I think you guys are already making a huge impact, and I think you will create even more of an impact with I think in general with every operator, but yes, like you said, the independents and the small ones, this is a game changer. So
Nice.
anyways, Randall, fantastic. If people want to find you, Randall, of course, where can they find information on Hosty? Of course, assuming, of course, your website, but anywhere else they can go see some case studies, check it out, schedule demos.
Yeah, I think the place is Hosty.ai. We have this awesome interactive demo. So it's pretty fun. It's modeled after Good Burger.
Yeah.
Home of the Good Burger. So yeah, I'd recommend giving that a call, checking it out. And we have a blog too as well. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Randall, thank you so much for being here. This has been a great conversation. And I can't wait to see where you guys are going to be in a very short time because it's just very exciting. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me on, Sebastian. And this is
All right.
great.
You're welcome. All right. See you soon.
All right. See you soon. All right. Bye.